Hello and welcome back to the Sex Talk. Today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about shame and money.
The Sex Talk.
So the topic is shame and money, and the person asks, do therapists ever continue seeing their patients for free if the patient can't afford to pay? After the first bill, I had a meltdown and threatened to quit. She hasn't billed again, and I don't know if she's running a huge tab on me or if it's for free. So I wanted to talk about money specifically in this episode because I think it is a huge source of shame for a lot of people. And as a society too, we view things that are transactional sometimes as problematic. We view things that cost more money as problematic, like I shouldn't do that. However, we have a weird love-hate relationship with money, right? So I don't talk a lot about money on this channel because it's specifically a sex and relationship channel, but you can't extricate the conversation about money out of your lives. Our lives are completely intertwined with money. I have the same talk when I talk to people about sex and relationships. We can't have therapists that avoid talking about sex. It's almost the same thing. If you avoid talking about money in therapy, then it's a huge problem. So we need to be talking about money with our clients in therapy if you're a therapist, or if you're a client and you have a therapist, I strongly encourage you to talk about money. So to answer the question in the question that this person asked about, is my therapist running up a tab? So I don't know if your therapist is running up a tab. What I do know is that she probably isn't, because there is a strong ethical factor around making sure that you have really good boundaries around what you charge for your service. Now, some therapists will offer lower fee. Sometimes therapists will do pro bono work, and pro bono work basically just means that the therapy is free, maybe for a small amount of time, maybe for a certain number of sessions. But this is absolutely something that you must clarify with your therapist. So in this particular situation, the therapist has not brought up money. Therefore, it's your responsibility 100% to bring up money. Your finances are actually an important thing to talk about in therapy. Your therapist probably knows how much money you're making, if you're struggling, if you are doing well and financially can afford more. Like, that is actually a topic of clinical conversation for you to be having with your therapist. That's number one. Number two, the fact that you blew up when you saw a bill, probably it was larger than you had expected, I'm presuming, that also means that you definitely need to be talking about money in your therapy, because it's definitely an issue for you. So if you're not talking about money in therapy, what are you talking about? Because money is sort of like at the core of our lives. You know, if we're struggling, if we're financially dependent on someone else, if we are financially doing really well, all of those plays a huge role in our well-being. I hate to say it, but that's the truth of the matter. So 100% you should always be talking about money in your therapy. A good therapist will be able to hear what you're saying. If you're saying, hey, I'm struggling financially, I can't make ends meet, then it behooves your therapist to say, well, hey, I don't want to make therapy an impediment for you, or for therapy to be counterproductive because you're shelling out hundreds of dollars to come see someone, yet you're struggling financially on the other hand. So a therapist that is empathetic or intuitive may suggest offering lower fees. Not forever, for a short period of time until maybe your finances improve. Which is tricky because you could pretend, i.e. lie to your therapist and act like your finances don't improve and continue seeing your therapist at that lower fee. But then what are you doing in therapy? What are you really getting out of it at that point, right? You're really you're lying. So you're not even showing up authentically in the room with your therapist. Money is, when we talk about money in the therapy room with our therapist, it really breaks down all of the shame that we have around money. I can't even tell you how much shame people have around money. People are so afraid to bring it up. For a period of time, I accepted insurance in my practice, and I have stopped doing that for a number of reasons. I have found that when people don't pay out of pocket for their mental health services, not all, and I'll clarify this in a second, but when people get a therapeutic service basically for free, like if it's through a Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid, United States Medicaid, which is the welfare program, or if their insurance covers it, completely with maybe a small copay, what happens then is people don't work as hard to fix their problems. There's this running story that we have around therapy that it should be this long, ongoing thing, that your therapist is sort of there to always be your backbone. And I find that to be problematic because as a society, we should be encouraged to create our own support system. I think it's fine if you want to pay a therapist to be your support system, but ultimately you want to be able to do it on your own. You want to be able to say, hey, we've worked on a problem in therapy for X amount of time. For me, I think, 6 months to 2 years is maximum that I think working with a client is good. Sometimes clients will come back, and that's a completely different story. Feel free to comment down below if you have any questions about that. But in terms of weekly intensive therapy where you're meeting with the client, meeting with the therapist once a week for an extended period of time, I think can develop a certain type of dependency. So when you're paying out of pocket for your therapeutic services, you're more likely to be a little bit more conscientious of your needs around it. You're more likely to say, hey, I'm spending, let's say your therapist is charging you $200. I'm spending $200 and my monthly budget for therapy is really only $400. So I'm going to see my therapist once a month or twice a month and really get the most I can out of it and do a lot of work in between. People that don't have to pay out of pocket for their therapy often don't do the work that they need to in between. They kind of get a little bit lackadaisical about it. They kind of rest on their laurels because guess what? Next week they have another free session with their therapist. Little side note, if you are one of those people that is seeing a therapist via an insurance company, also know that insurance company is paying significantly lower than what that therapist is worth. So you should be very grateful, and you should take every session with that therapist very seriously. Also, these online platforms that have emerged like Talkspace and Betterhelp, I think they only really pay their therapists maybe $60 an hour. So you're getting a huge bargain. You've got the bargain therapist. So really appreciate those therapists. Take the work seriously. If you're paying out of pocket for therapy, you are getting the best therapy that you can, because you're also being really discernful about what kind of therapist you're going to give $200 to. You're probably not going to give a therapist that you don't click with, that doesn't support you in the way that you need, $200 because you're actually having to count your money for it right at that point. So this is why I think money is so important to talk about. If you're coming to therapy and your therapy is free and you're complaining about money, this is where you're gonna get stuck, because you're complaining about money. to a therapist that you see weekly, basically for free. So what happens is you're getting stuck. There's not going to be a lot of motivation for you to seek out more money because this service is free. You're also getting your therapist stuck. You know, a good therapist can make upwards of $250 to even $400. And if your therapist is getting paid via an insurance company, they're not getting that much. So they're getting ripped off, and you are essentially kind of involved in that system that's ripping them off, and you feel ripped off in life. So here, nobody is getting an opportunity to get ahead. So talk about money. The point of this episode is, one, talk about money in therapy with your therapist. Two, if you're paying for therapy really low fee, or using like Betterhelp or Talkspace or one of those like, you know, like lower fee, affordable therapy sites, good on you. Be really, really grateful and thankful that these platforms exist, because those therapies are working for close to nothing. They have spent, I can tell you, because I'm a therapist myself, thousands and thousands of dollars on an education, and they have to work their butts off around the clock to make that money back when they're working. And they work really hard. Therapy is not an easy thing. I think a lot of people got into the field thinking, oh, therapy is going to be so easy. It's a lot of work because we're working with your issues. And we all have them. We're working with baggage, we're working with issues, we're working with trauma. And so the burnout rate is really high. And so it really behooves therapists to charge more for their service so they can provide a better service to you. But if you can't afford it and you still need therapy, then we need to have affordable places for people to go to get mental health services. Therefore, insurance and affordable mental health has become really something that we need in society. But there's a problem with it too if you're not addressing money in your therapy, because money is completely intertwined with your mental health. So a little bit about the shame that we have around money. I'm going to do another episode on this, because sex work is sex that is transactional around money, and people often really shun it. And I made a documentary film about it. And in fact, paying for sex is actually not a terrible idea, but we have such like this hatred towards money, and we feel so negatively towards it. And obviously we live in a democratic capitalistic society here if you're in the United States, so that makes a lot of sense. We see a huge disparities in terms of wealth and how much money people make. And that's all tied into socioeconomic stuff, race, culture, it's so vast. But my point today is there's so much shame around money, and people lie to get it. People hide how much money they make. People don't talk about it with their partners in long-term relationships because it's really, really difficult to talk about. We have a lot of shame about it. We have a lot of shame if we don't make enough money. We have a lot of shame if we come from lower class or poorer backgrounds. And some people come from have a lot of shame if they end up making a lot of money. And they make more money than their friends, or they make more money than the people that they work with. So the way that we undo the shame is we talk about it. Barbara Stanny wrote a really great book called Overcoming Underearning. It's a little coachy, but there's some really great worksheets in there where you can really kind of get to the bottom of your relationship with money. You can ask yourself questions. You can journal about it. Again, if you're watching my shame series, I recommended you do this in the beginning. Get a journal and start journaling about all the things you feel shame about. Money is on the list. And in your money section, I want you to talk about what ideas you were raised with around money. Did your family or the people that raised you, your caregivers, how did they see money? Did they save money? Did they spend money? Did one parent deal with money in a certain way and the other parent don't? Did they have fights about money? Did no one ever talk about money? I want you to start writing about that. Like, what is your story with money? Because if you can't have conversations about money now, then how are you going to have it in a relationship where you live with someone, where the bills are shared, when you have kids? I really, really strongly encourage you to start tapping into the shame that you have around money, because I will tell you that we all have shame around money. It doesn't matter how wealthy you are, how poor you are. The more you talk about it, the better of understanding you're going to have around it. And going back to therapy, make sure you talk to your therapist about money. Make sure you talk to your therapist about your fee. If you are well aware that your therapist is not making a lot of money, bring that up. I would acknowledge it. Like I can't even tell you when a client acknowledges, like how valuable my work is to them, how that makes me feel. So if you can acknowledge that to your therapist, like, I'm getting these sessions for free and I can't thank you enough, or yes, your fee is really high. Yes, your fee is really high and I definitely see why. Acknowledge those things, because the work that we do is really difficult and you need help and we want to support you. And money is a big part of that conversation. In order to be able to support you, we need to be able to feel good and be healthy and alive as well. So that was today's talk about money and shame. Again, money is something that we should all be talking about with partners, therapists, friends. If you're not talking about money, there's got to be shame around it. In the first shame and sex episode in this series, I identified what shame means, and shame is anything that you don't talk about. So in this series, we're going to talk about all the things that we don't talk about, and money is one of those things. We are going to disassemble and undo shame, topic by topic, subject by subject, day by day on this channel here at the Sex Talk series. So thank you so much. My name is Mo. I am a sex therapist. I started my practice in Los Angeles, California, the United States. I now live wherever the flames take me, so to speak. Los Angeles is still the base of my practice and the work that I do, but thanks to YouTube and so many fabulous things out there on the World Wide Web, I am able to work with people and clients all over. So I want to hear from you. Put your comments down below. You can also email me, mo@lasextherapist.com. That's MOU @lasextherapist.com. Stay well, and I will talk to you soon.
The Sex Talk.